Hi, my name's Alan White, and I am the author of Exponential Groups, which is being released on February 1st from Hendrickson Publishers. I am a native of the great state of Kansas. Went to school in Missouri for my BA, my MDiv, and then spent almost the next 20 years in California, where I served a great church called New Life Christian Center in the Central Valley of Northern California. Served there for 15 years. Went into coaching and consulting churches. Then about 10 years ago, moved here to Greenville, South Carolina, where I served another great church, Brookwood Church, where I served for 4 years, and then went back into coaching and consulting. My wife and I have 4 children between the ages of 3 and 15, and live here in the Greenville area. The publisher had sent over several questions for me to talk about the book, and so I kind of feel like I'm interviewing myself. So we'll see how this is gonna go. First, they're asking, who's the audience? What's the book about? The audience for this are pastors, staff members, small group champions, whether they're staff or not staff, small group leadership teams. That's who this is for. And the book is really, it came out of a lot of my own trial and error, my own frustration of either trying to implement ineffective methods or not successfully implementing successful methods. But the things that I've kind of come across, learned from other people, thoughts that I've wrestled with, and that's where we ended up with the book. Okay, the first question says this. What has made you so passionate about expanding churches' small groups? You know, it really goes back to Acts 5:42 that says that they met in temple courts and they met house to house. The temple courts are a weekend worship service. The house to house are our small groups. There you go. And when I see groups as being able to meet almost all of the primary needs in a church. They help with assimilation and connection. They help with discipleship, obviously, serving, outreach, giving. But the primary purpose of groups, I believe, is leadership development. And the more groups you have, the more leaders you have, the more you can pour into those people and help them to lead. And to me, that's far better than having a bunch of people, like I used to do, gathered in a room teaching them a Bible study. And instead of having these people that are mature, these people that are knowledgeable, and send them out, and they all form groups on their own. And I think that's better for everybody involved. Second question, what do you think is the biggest factor hindering churches from successful group making? Fear. Fear. Fear that you're going to lose control, fear that you're going to fail, fear trying something new, all kinds of fear. Fear of being blamed. Fear. And a big part of going from being stuck with 30% of my groups, or 30% of my church in groups, to being in a place where we had more people in groups than we had attending church, the biggest change happened in my own mind, in my own thinking. And that was the biggest obstacle to our growth in groups. Number 3, what advice would you give to someone who would like to start a small group but doesn't want to be considered its leader? Don't call the person a leader. If they're gathering a group to do a study, they are the leader. If they can gather people, they're leading, but they don't want to be called leading. And when they get comfortable doing that, then give them some leadership training, and then you can call them a leader. But a lot of people don't regard themselves naturally as being leaders, and yet there's more leadership being exhibited in our church, I think, than what we acknowledge or recognize. All right, number 4. What are ways that a church can be creative in its approach to creating groups? Now, if you're talking about the church as an institution, I don't think that's the place to start. I think that if the leadership of the church will give their people permission and opportunity, their people will become very creative in how they form groups. So we did that. We said, get together with people that you know and do a study, and we had friends that met every Thursday morning at Starbucks, and they became a group, and mechanics in a break room at work, and they became a group, and passengers on a commuter train, and they became a group, and guys that like to make barbecue, and they became a group, and police officers, they got tired of being asked to fix somebody's speeding ticket. They became a group because nobody was going to fix any tickets in that group. So give your people permission and opportunity, and they will become creative. You don't need to become creative for them. You just need to support them and help them, coach them, and train them to success. Another question here is, what's the best piece of advice you've received about small groups? My friend Brett Eastman, who has Life Together Ministries, said this to me once. He said, let the exceptions be the exceptions. So, for example, You open it up to your church to get together with your friends, invite people that you know to be in a group together. And then what comes to mind is, well, what about the people who are new to our church? What about the people who are new to our area? And what if they don't get invited? How are they going to get into a group? And sometimes we will create an entire system just to accommodate the possible exceptions. But you let the exceptions be the exceptions. You create a strategy that's going to work for the vast majority of people. And then you have some way, apart from that, to accommodate people who may not get invited to a group. But you let the exceptions be the exceptions. You don't build the whole thing for them or on them. The last question here is, what projects are you working on now or have planned for the future? I've been working with Mariners Church on a discipleship experience called Rooted that they brought over from Kenya. It's a very holistic approach to discipleship. It goes all the way back to the 1st century, the Moravians, the Celts, the early Wesleyans used these practices, and it's something worth looking into. I'm also working with Rick Rusaw, who is the author of the Externally Focused Church, as well as the author of The Neighboring Church, on a new ministry, new initiative called Neighboring, which I believe is kind of the next gen of the missional movement. Personally, I am working on some online courses that I'm developing. One is out called Leading an Exponential Group Launch. Let me say it right. The other one is called Coaching Exponential Groups, and that's kind of on the drawing board right now. But a lot of churches have abandoned coaching because it's difficult. And I'm not going to make it easier, but it's necessary. And I think if churches have abandoned coaching altogether, I think they've made a huge mistake as far as the ongoing groups. I coach churches. I blog over at alanwhite.org. There I am. And also the next book that's probably in the works has to do with holistic discipleship. I've really been compelled by a verse in the Great Commission that said, where Jesus said, "And teach them to obey all that I've commanded you." Because I think we've got it wrong. I think we're teaching people all that Jesus commanded. I don't know that we're teaching people to obey. Because so much of our discipleship, so much of our Christian education involves head knowledge. Now, don't get me wrong. God gave us a book and God gave us a brain, and that's not a coincidence. However, we're educated well beyond our level of obedience, as Howard Hendricks said. And so how does what we know about God's Word, how does it affect my attitudes? How does it affect my behaviors? And so I'm beginning to follow some of these kinds of thoughts. I know that other people have written on this, but that's probably the next big one. So that's the end of my interview with myself. They didn't tell me how to close it. But anyway, check out this book. For some of you, you're going to get excited. For some of you, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. If you get into this and start thinking about doing some of this and you get in the weeds, contact me on my website, and I'll walk you through this and help you out. All right. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.